I'm just struggling here for a second, trying to get my presentation mode going.
So is this the date?
Actually, this is an older file that I had prepared previously, and I'd forgotten to change the 2020 date on this, so I apologize for that.
So observant, Joe.
Who said that?
Alan.
Oh, you getting back? Okay.
I apologize for the delay. At the beginning of the master plan, there were a number of goals that were established. The airport had experienced a number of years of significant growth at the airport, and they needed to understand how those changing conditions affected the need for future facilities and what needed to be developed for short-term as well as long-term. In addition, the increased demand created a number of new challenges for the airport, both landside, terminal, and airside. And they needed to identify a number of solutions that could be adopted to identify what future facilities were needed. Another goal of the master plan was to develop a 20-year capital improvement program that would identify what facilities were needed, where they might be placed, and when those facilities would be needed. It's important to understand that the purpose of the master plan is to take a very high-level look at facilities. We look at using building blocks to identify where facilities need to go. And we don't look at the very minute detail of interiors of buildings and systems of that nature. We're trying to preserve property on the airport for future facilities. And we want to make sure that once we come up with a plan, that every action that the airport takes from today in the future is one step closer to that plan. The master plan took 2 years. It was broken down into 4 basic phases: a pre-planning phase where we met with stakeholders and identified what the vision of the airport should be. The investigation phase included determining what the baseline conditions were for the airport, what the demand levels were, what the capacity limitations were, and then developing a forecast. What's important to note here is that the FAA is required to review and approve the forecast before any subsequent phase of the master plan can be continued. Once baseline conditions and forecasts are developed, we then went into the process of identifying what the future facility requirements would be to meet the future demand forecast. Based on knowing what the facility requirements were, we then evaluated numerous alternatives for different facilities, whether it's terminal parking facilities, runways, taxiways, and so forth, to identify what the preferred solutions might be that could be adopted into the master plan. The final phase is the implementation phase, where we undertook the process of documenting the study. What's important here is that we identify a set of plans. It's called the airport layout plan, that identifies existing facilities as well as all the proposed future facilities. And it's important to understand that, again, the FAA has a requirement to review this airport layout plan and approve it. The final step in the implementation phase is seeking adoption from the community. We began the study with an extensive public involvement program where we engaged stakeholders. We held numerous numbers of meetings with stakeholders. We identified various committees, both citizen advisory committees as well as technical committees, including tenants, airport users, community interests, government agencies, and so forth. And then in addition to a number of stakeholder meetings through the study, we held 2 significant public information meetings where the public was invited. We presented information, they provided input, and then we were able to take that input and reflect it into the final documents. As I mentioned, we began the study with visioning, meeting with each of the stakeholder groups to try to understand what they believed were the important issues for the airport, what needed to be changed, what was working well, what wasn't working well, so that we could be guided in our study efforts to make sure that we address the issues of the community. A number of issues were identified: how the airport would be configured for commercial as well as general aviation facilities. Taxiways needed to be corrected because of a number of deficiencies and not meeting FAA standards. Terminal needed to be expanded simply because of the extensive growth that was occurring. And there was tremendous demand for landside facilities, both access and parking, rental car expansion, and as I mentioned again, integration of general aviation facilities with the commercial development. And then the last issue that was identified was air cargo expansion. What was important is that we wanted to make sure that the master plan was integrated with the regional plans. And so we reviewed each of these regional plans to make sure that our study and our recommendations were consistent with the recommendations in this plan. As part of the master plan, it was prepared through the lens of sustainability. And what we did is we wanted to make sure that all of our recommendations were going to be made in a sustainable manner that would reduce impact on the environment. There were several specific studies that were included as part of the study, evaluating the recycling program that the airport had, identifying how that could be improved, doing an energy audit of the airport systems, making recommendations of how to decrease the carbon footprint. Also, we conducted a solar feasibility study. One of the elements that we needed to evaluate was how the airport growth might impact noise on the community. And then another part of the study was to develop an economic development study that identified where the airport could develop future facilities to meet the needs of the community as the community continued to grow. The first step of the master plan began with an inventory where we identified the baseline conditions for all of the facilities at the airport: terminal, general aviation, support facilities, fueling, a number of facilities that needed to be improved in the long term. Our inventory included an overview of environmental conditions. We developed limitation maps that helped us understand where all of the critical areas were on the airport, so that as we made recommendations for development, that we were able to minimize and hopefully avoid some of these environmental conditions that existed on the airport. After developing the inventory and completing the investigations, or midway through the investigation phase, we developed our commercial passenger forecast. As you can see here in the graph, that growth at the airport had been increasing significantly. And even since completion of the master plan, you can see at the end of 2018 that the commercial passenger enplanements had continued to grow. The dotted line indicates what the master plan actually forecasted. What's important to understand here is that we convert a master plan numbers, the number of enplanements in a given year, into what we call planning activity levels. So the important thing is that we don't plan facilities based on reaching a certain level of activity in a certain year, but we identify what facilities might be needed when certain planning activity levels are reached. And it doesn't matter when those planning activity levels are reached. We're just trying to identify what facilities will be needed to meet the needs at that level. In addition, we looked at aircraft operations. Again, we identified what the level of operations would be at different planning activity levels. Total operations are composed of both operations in general aviation aircraft as well as the commercial aircraft. And as you can see, again, growth, although not as dramatic as the growth in passenger enplanements, we still show strong growth in operations throughout the 20-year planning horizon. You might ask yourself, well, how does COVID-19 affect the master plan and the forecast? What's important to understand is this particular graphic here shows all of the economic downturns that occurred since 1950 and how it affected the aviation industry and numbers of enplanements in the entire aviation community. And as you can see, at each of these economic downturns, there was a reversal of that downturn, as well as strong growth in the aviation sector. So what's important to understand is that although we recognize COVID-19 has caused a decrease in activity, we believe and strongly believe that the industry is resilient, and that the numbers of employments as well as operations will turn around and will continue on the path that we forecasted. Again, what's important to note is we don't know when it's going to occur, but our master planning is tailored to identifying what facilities are needed when planning activity levels are reached. After developing our forecast, we identified numerous areas where facilities were deficient. These included the runway protection zone, needing to acquire some additional property, some minor property, reconfiguring taxiways that are remnants from previous airfield layouts, expanding terminal facilities, relocating fuel farm facilities that were not in the best location, trying to identify solutions for congestion on the curbside, as well as expanding both public parking, overflow parking, and rental car facilities, and then identifying how future maintenance facilities for the airport and where what their needs were and where they can be located. Based on the investigation phase, we took all of that information and tried to identify what we believed was a general land use, future land use moving forward. And as you can see in this picture, what we're trying to do is segregate both commercial operations from the general aviation operations. This land use plan led us into better identifying alternatives and where those alternatives should be placed, so that in the long term, we end up with a plan that provides more than a 20-year plan, but that might provide a 40 or 60 or 80-year plan, and every step that the airport takes is one step closer to that ultimate vision. For each facility at the airport, and this is just one example where we looked at terminals, we identified any number of alternatives. In some cases, we might have examined 12 or 15 different alternatives to identify the best solution for the airport. We did alternatives for terminal, for landside, for parking, roads, runways, taxiways, and in every case, we tried to identify the best alternatives for the future. We ultimately combined all of these different alternatives into what we developed as an ultimate airport development plan. What's important to understand in this graphic is that this graphic doesn't represent a 20-year build out, but represents a potential long-term ultimate build out of the airport, perhaps in 80 years. And again, the key is take incremental steps that are one step closer to this ultimate development plan. We completed our master plan by developing a capital improvement program. We break that capital improvement program into what facilities are needed in each planning activity level. Planning activity level represents what might be needed in the first 5 years. And as you can see here in green, most of the facilities that we're recommending in the first planning activity level are airside, taxiway improvements, widening of taxiways to meet FAA standards. And again, you'll see in the terminal area, improvements in parking facilities and circulation around the terminal. Planning activity level 2 basically continues the recommendations of making airfield improvements, additional taxiway improvements, as well as improvements in the general aviation area, de-icing aprons and so forth. The third planning phase shows continuous development of taxiways, improvements, and this is shown in red, a number of airfield improvements, additional terminal expansion, and then continuing landside improvements as demand requires. One of the components of the capital improvement program is to understand how much the entire master plan will cost, and we break this cost out into each of the planning activity levels. For planning activity level 1, we project that the cost might be around $113 million. Planning activity level 2 would be less because most of the improvements would be made in planning activity level 1 to meet the airport needs. Activity level 3 again is a big period of growth for the airport. What's important to understand about how these projects are funded is that it's all paid for by user fees, aviation fuel tax, and airport revenues, and that no local tax dollars are used to develop the airport. In the end, we ended up with a 20-year plan that actually provides guidance to the community for beyond the 20 years. The plan is aligned with the local and regional plans, and it updates and refreshes and replaces the previous master plan so that you have a vision for the future. We would recommend, based on the project and coordination with the community, that you adopt the master plan.
All right, thank you so much, Steve. And we welcome any questions or comments.
So I believe at this point, we'll actually ready to open up. Well, I guess if there are questions or comments, we actually are opening a public hearing, and then there will be an opportunity, I believe, at the end of the public hearing for questions or comments. That's my understanding of the process. So with that, thank you very much for the presentation. It's a lot of information to condense in a very tight framework. So I appreciate that and find it very interesting. All right, we'll begin our consideration of the Eugene Airport Master Plan update by opening the public hearing. I now open the public hearing on behalf of Eugene City Council and invite the Chair Buck of the Lane County Board of Commissioners to open their meeting.
Thank you. Yes, so we will open the public hearing for the Lane County Board of Commissioners as well. So participants are encouraged to raise issues or concerns with sufficient specificity to enable the county to address or respond to them prior to any board deliberation. So I'm first going to call for disclosure from any commissioners for abstentions due to any conflicts of interest or interests of bias. Are there any out there?
I have none.
No?
I have none.
Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing that.
This is Pete Sorensen. I have none.
Okay.
I have none. So if I don't say I have none, does that mean I have one? No, I have none.
Very good. No abstentions, and I'll call for any challenges to the board's qualifications to hear this matter. Are there any challenges? All right, I don't see or hear any, so I'll toss it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. This public hearing is now open. For those of you who have signed up to testify, at the beginning of your testimony, please state your name clearly, and for Eugene residents, your ward, if known. You will have 3 minutes to comment. If you are watching the meeting, the timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light and beep will indicate the end of the 3 minutes. And Jessica, how many folks do we have signed up to testify?
Right now, 2 hands are raised.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first testimony will come from Betsy Heights, followed by Ginevra Ralph.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors, and County Commissioners. I am Betsy Hitz. I reside in Eugene in Ward 1. This testimony is a shortened version of the email I sent to all of you yesterday. Thanks, Mayor Venice, for acknowledging the receipt. A September 2019 article on the Eugene Airport Master Plan focuses on improvements to handle expanded air travel. Since then, COVID-19 has slowed air travel considerably. I suggest that during this pause, the City and Council could include in the Airport Master Plan a focus on the myriad ways in which carbon emissions associated with air travel into and out of Eugene, Lane County could be reduced over time. I propose that Goal 13, energy conservation, of the Airport Master Plan be amended to energy conservation and carbon reduction. I would like to recommend that the City and Council require the Eugene Airport to join Airport Carbon Accreditation. 314 airports in 71 countries, affecting 44.8% of air passengers, including 47 airports in North America, are in one of four increasingly more ambitious phases of airport carbon accreditation. The phases are: number one, mapping the carbon footprint; two, reducing carbon emissions at the airport; three, engaging vendors in lowering carbon emissions; and four, becoming carbon neutral. 3 Oregon airports, Portland International, Hillsboro, and Troutdale, are part of this consortium of forward-thinking providers of air travel. The City of Eugene Climate Action Plan does not address carbon emission reduction at the Eugene Airport. Will the Lane County Climate Action Plan address airport emissions? It seems more than reasonable to me for Eugene and Lane County, since both have climate action plans, to be aligned with airport carbon accreditation. Thanks kindly for your attention to these very important matters. Good evening.
Our next speaker will be Ginevra Ralph, followed by Alan Antila.
Well, good evening, Mayor Venus, Chair Buck, councilors, commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm in Councilor Zelenka's ward. I do want to say that Andrew Martz and Catherine Stevens set me straight about the difference between this master plan and what will be a more fine-grained facilities plan. But I do think it's timely to bring up an issue and plant the seed, and I don't want to miss that chance if I'm not reading the newspaper quickly enough. But because we're in COVID, we're all, I don't think my camera's on, but we're all very keenly aware of how much we all lip read. And so I'm putting on a mask, and then I'm going to put up a piece of plexiglass, and now you really can't hear me. And what I want to say is that the access and accessibility for all travelers when we are back to normal will remain as compromised for them as that just was for all of us. Making an airport announcement louder or just shouting at somebody doesn't help. It just distorts the sound for a hearing aid or a cochlear implant user. And what we need is an easy, seamless, universal sound delivery system. And one exists. It's called a hearing loop. You can put a small one in at the ticket counter, at TSA, at a concession counter, and you can put in larger ones for the general announcements or around the baggage claims. And the time to do it is in major remodel or new construction. It's the same system that exists if you go to the London airport or Sydney airport or the Gerald Ford Airport in Michigan and Phoenix. A lot of the airports our size have put in hearing loops. And so I'm just hoping that you will make sure that we are looking at that kind of a different level of accessibility. Yes, physical, but the auditory accessibility, as well known as Eugene is for disability issues and accessibility. This is the one piece that I think we've been missing. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and thanks for your work.
And our last speaker will be Alan Antila. Alan, are you with us?
I am hearing nothing. Hello, I'm not sure if I'm coming through. My name's Alan Antilla. I am with Hearing Support Solutions. I live in Eugene, and I'm also a team member of the Loop Lane County Committee with Ginevra Ralph and Sue Pritchard. I wanted to further expand on what Ginevra was just speaking about regarding hearing loops. My entire professional career, I've been an broadcast audio video engineer, and past 10 years I've been living with hearing loss, and it's been quite challenging in public places such as airports, retail counters, anywhere where there's the public gathers and there's various ambient noise, because hearing aids are great for one-on-one and quiet environments, but in public environments where there's lots of ambient noise, it's really a train wreck for people with hearing loss. So once again, an induction hearing loop, it's a universally accepted and global assistance hearing system that helps people quite easily be able to hear and cut through all the noise. And it's a tried and true technology. I thank you for this opportunity to speak about this. This is a big deal for me because of my hearing loss, and I can't tell you how many times in airports I have been unable to hear what the ticket agent has announced during the boarding process. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Am I understanding that he was our final constituent to comment?
Yes, it is.
That's great. Thank you to all three of you for your testimony, for taking the time tonight. It was helpful to hear your thoughts. And with that, I will close the public hearing.
And I believe it's my turn to also close the public hearing.
Right, there we go. And I do have two counselors queued up to speak, and Commissioner will just watch the queue, and we'll give those counselors a chance and then turn it over to a commissioner unless a commissioner pops in sooner.
So we're not used to this format. So Commissioner, there should be a raise hand button if you want to speak and get in the queue. If you can't find it, wave your hand vigilantly and I'll find you.
So
And Chair Buck, you can call on me at the appropriate time. I'm on audio only.
All right. We actually have an even number of counselors and commissioners tonight, so I think we'll just do one each back and forth. So we'll start with Counselor Zelenka.
Thank you, Mayor. Several questions. So given the passenger forecast is somewhat related to this work, and it's had precipitous drop, and we saw the graph that it showed other drops and then it picked up back up. What's the impact on the plan, and is it going to push out some of these short-term, mid-term, or long-term projects?
Yes, Councilor Zelenka, I would say we certainly have seen a huge drop in passengers. For the next fiscal year, this fiscal year that we're currently in, I'm projecting about 30% of our passenger levels compared to 2019. And then after that, a little harder to predict. It just really depends on how soon we come out of this pandemic. So yes, it impacts the planning activity levels, really just shifting them further out. So as Steve stated in his presentation, the planning activity levels aren't necessarily attached to a date or a year. They are when we reach certain thresholds in passenger numbers and operations and those kinds of things. So especially for things like a terminal expansion project, that would be pushed much further out. It could potentially be pushed out. I know it was initially in our capital improvement program at the end of the 5-year CIP planning period. I'm absolutely confident it will be beyond that now.
Right. So does that mean we have this money in hand for the short term, the 113 million?
Well, a lot of the projects that were in that first planning activity level were airfield projects. So a lot of those are just keeping up pavement and making sure that we are bringing our airfield into current FAA standards. So as long as we continue to receive airport improvement program funding from the FAA, we will be able to continue with those maintenance projects.
Right. So it's like over $60 million, over half of the short-term stuff. Yep. So those get paid for as we go, or do we have an account with millions in it to pay for this stuff?
Well, so certainly the pandemic has caused some challenges. So, you know, we received CARES Act funding, and that's mainly to keep us operationally sound. Our capital improvement program relies mostly on airport improvement program grant funding from the FAA, but there's usually a local match associated with that. We usually make that up through passenger facility charges and also airport revenues, both of which have taken a really big hit right now with the severe drop in passengers and, of course, the drop in other revenues like airport concession and parking. So this current fiscal year, that CARES Act provided 100% match on the project that's been under construction this summer, which is a rehabilitation of the middle section of Taxiway Alpha. Next summer's project is secondary runway rehabilitation. If we don't get 100% funding on that project, we will not have the match to be able to do it. So that is a very serious issue that we're looking for additional help from Congress, hopefully to be able to at least get us that 100% funding for next fiscal year as well on the capital project.
Yeah. So I take it that means we don't have a balance that we can draw from to be able to.
Not that much. It's a very large
million.
Yeah, it's a lot. So.
Right. The second question I had was related to the ticketing. There's two projects: the ticketing airline expansion area and the new terminal concourse, which is together 17 and 20, almost $24 million. Could you explain those a little bit more? And those seem to be related to passenger counts. So those would be pushed out?
I can confidently tell you that those will be pushed out now unless we see some astounding bounce back. But even then, we've taken such a financial hit at this point that we're really going to just have to take a look at when that planning activity level will even be approachable financially. But those two projects, you know, under the 2019 passenger numbers, were very needed projects just for capacity reasons. We really were busting at the seams. We had a new airline that wanted to come in and operate. It was going to be a situation where we'd have to put them in a temporary building. So building those areas out ahead of time before you need them is important. And then same for gate space. You know, we've been gate constrained and kind of still are gate constrained, mainly because the airlines want to operate always at the exact same times, the morning push and then the midday turn and then the evening remain overnight visits. So, but that's not something that we're going to be pursuing at this point. We will watch passenger numbers and revenues closely to determine when we'll be able to move forward on that.
Okay. Yeah, I saw in the news the president of United Airlines said he didn't expect passengers counts to be back until late 2023. So that's a push pretty far out. I was interested in the last question I had, interested in the solar feasibility study. I didn't see any solar projects in here. In the last 5 years, for instance, solar prices have dropped to 30% of what they were. And so they're substantially, depending on when you did this analysis, it could affect that. And are these buried in there? And what's the plan for adding solar to the airport? And secondly, is the 1% for solar involved a requirement on this project as well?
Well, let me just say, the airport master plan is a high level plan, and it's really very prescribed by the FAA, exactly each component you need to have. And it doesn't really get into really detailed plans, like not in the terminal building and not elsewhere. It's just an overarching plan. What we take from the master plan is then we can do more further studies and whole projects out of that would then include that detail. So I agree. I think that solar technologies and prices have certainly become more reasonable, so that I would love to see at least some solar generation on the airport that would then be able to reduce our carbon footprint. So, but it will take additional study to do that.
So what was the solar feasibility study then?
I'm sorry?
What was the solar feasibility study then? That was in the slide that Steve was talking about.
If there were areas on the airfield that we could potentially put solar panels, part of what we had to look at is reflectivity, because that can, at the time, the concern was the blinding pilots who were also the air traffic controllers. Now I understand the technology has evolved and that's not necessarily anymore.
Right, because we have an enormous amount of rooftop capacity.
Correct. Yeah.
All over the terminal. Okay, that'd be interesting to hear more about that. And if we could maybe get some more information on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, I will just remind commissioners that we are working on a 2-minute timer, and Commissioner Sorensen, 3 minutes. I'm seeing 3 minutes. So Commissioner Sorensen, feel free to start us out.
I'll just ask these questions quickly, and then I'd ask that staff just send an email to the board and to the commissioners with some of the responses to them because of the limitations on the amount of time. So I'll just ask the question, and then I'd ask that you send us back an email with more expansive answers. The first is that Mr. Alverson has sent in a request for the elected officials to ask that a clause be inserted that about the appropriate location of the airport master plan to have the city's airport division work with Eugene Parks and Open Space on other partners to design and implement a feature or set of features that would fulfill the community gateway function as the Rivers to Ridges open space study that was adopted by the City of Eugene and Lane County Board of Commissioners. And so I'd like to make sure that that is done. And for purposes of my question, I'd like to make sure that you provide written comment on that back to the board and the City Council. My second question is that one of the public commenters said that there's an association of, I'll just say this, environmental airport managers that included several airports in Oregon in the Portland area. And I'm wondering if as part of the adoption of this master plan, we can include a section that says that the City of Eugene's airport would be a member of that group and is relying on that group to provide input on future issues concerning the Eugene airport. My third question has to do with the City of Eugene, not Lane County, but City of Eugene's climate policies, and whether or not the different aspects of the airport and its operation and the use of air transport is measured and is part of the City of Eugene's climate policies, because my understanding is that air travel uses a substantial amount of carbon, and ignoring or having the airport not part of that seems to be in conflict with our stated goals. Lane County's climate action planning process is still underway. So I wouldn't want to bring in Lane County's policies at this time, but the city of Eugene has existing policies. And then last but not least, I just want to say that if it is not appropriate to comment in the master plan about the technology that improves the hearing ability of people to hear airport announcements, if that's not appropriate to put in this master plan, then I'd like to get an answer to what would be the best way for the city, if it wanted to implement this hearing loop technology. And I think I've taken my time, but I would like to get answers to these questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does anyone want to respond to the commissioner's comments at this point, or should we go on?
Respond in writing, but I can tell you briefly, I did forward a sustainability update to the council and the commissioners this afternoon, and it details the work that we've been doing at the airport. And one thing I would just flag really briefly is that I realized that there are affiliations that Portland and their reliever airports have signed on to. We took a look at that one, but instead we went a different route. And we actually, through a competitive process, we were selected as one of 2 airports in the nation to pilot a program for airport zero and low emissions roadmap process. So it's an airport cooperative research program guidebook that the researchers did the research, put it together, put a guidebook together, and we are now one of 2 test airports in the nation. So we're coming along nicely with that. I outlined some of the detail around that in the email that I sent to you. So I welcome you to take a look at that and kind of see what we are doing around that. And then as far as the other items Commissioner Sorensen asked about, some things, really the master plan is in its final format, but I think some of these issues should be addressed in other ways. And certainly the hearing loop program is something that we have wanted to do. We've really looked into it. As Ginevra said, it's really something that you do during a major construction project because it takes quite a lot of planning and coordination. And when you're tearing walls out, that's going to do it. But there are some smaller ways that we can test the system. And so that's really something that we would look at to do right now, is to start small and test a few things and see what works, because sometimes there's interference that you need to learn about before you make a major investment. So I think those are things that we can do right now and not having to wait for a major construction project to do.
Great, thank you so much. And Councilor Sarette, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. In spite of the COVID pandemic, I'm excited to see us looking to the future and preparing for a future, even if it's gonna be pushed out in terms of a timeline. I think we still will have air travel come back to some level once we get through this. So I guess I had a question, I think probably for the city attorney, but maybe Catherine can answer the question. If given that both bodies, the commissioners and the council, are each going to have separate days that they vote to adopt this master plan, if we were to amend the plan in our session, what would be the process for reconciliation?
I know that I'm going to if Emily Jerome is available, I'm going to let her pop on and speak to this. And I also know that the county commissioner, or I'm sorry, county council Andy Clark may want to speak to this as well. Is she there?
Yep.
Oh, there she is. There we are.
Yeah. So, it can be kind of clunky. It's a good question. We do need the bodies to take action on the same version of the plan. So if there is a particular amendment that one of the elected officials would like to make tonight, that would expedite our ability to provide you both with the same options for action when you meet. The meeting dates that each of you have scheduled are listed in your AISs. That would be the most expedient route if there's a proposed amendment. If not, then we will just kind of ping pong back and forth. The effective date that we've provided in the ordinances for both bodies is contingent upon the other one taking the same action. So we don't get in a situation where, say, the city of Eugene approves the plan and then the county approves the plan with an amendment. So not a great, a clean way to get it done, but that's how we would do it. So, I would urge you, if you're hearing from staff that actually the plan isn't the best place to move forward with these issues, it would be more expedient and more straightforward to deal with them in a way that didn't require both bodies' actions like this.
And if I could just Steve Domino to weigh in, because there is some process that has taken place with the FAA, and I want to make sure that I think the way that it could happen is actually in the ordinance itself, but not in a revision of the plan, because the FAA has already signed off on the plan. Is that correct, Steve?
You guys don't need to get all nervous. I'm not going to make a big change to the plan.
No, but these are good points and issues that I think that have been raised by the public and that you're bringing up, and that is sounds like also endorsed by Catherine Stevens. So it's not that we do want to find the right place to put these. You're right, Catherine Stevens, that we could include a provision in the ordinances that go before the bodies that at least the city council is used to hearing called uncodified provisions. And that could certainly be added to the ordinances and would make it simpler to incorporate these things than amending the plan.
Okay.
Any direction
so I recognize,
would be
thanks,
great.
Emily. I recognize this is a prescriptive document laid out by the federal government. So I'm not anticipating anything crazy, but I just wanted to speak to a couple of things first before I get to the thing I was thinking about as an amendment. So I appreciate the public input that we received via email about looking at the Rivers to Ridges plan and identifying, working with Parks and Open Space and the airport, connecting around that for the gateway designation. That's not part of the airport master plan, but I'm just expressing interest in that as a potential future thing for us to consider. Obviously, the hearing loop installation, that would be part of the facilities plan. I think that's a great thing. I'm really glad that you've already been looking into it. Then I am interested in this idea of, so I can't look at my airport master plan right now because I'd have to put a thumb drive in and minimize everybody and try to look up a thing. So I don't know if I can easily make a proposal to amend, but Betsy Hitz had suggested that in goal 13, I believe, be amended to include carbon emissions reductions in that goal. So if staff was able to help me ensure that I'm identifying the correct part of the airport master plan, I would make a motion to amend the plan to have goal 13 include a reference to reducing carbon emissions.
So Councilor Surratt, I can address that. Sure. And I think it was maybe a misunderstanding. The airport master plan document does not actually have goals stated.
Okay.
I think goal 13 is actually the Oregon statewide planning goals and guidelines.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's not a revision that is relevant to the airport master plan, but it could be relevant to goal 13 for the state planning goals and guidelines.
And that's when she was saying it, I was thinking about the land use planning goals and wondered if that's what she was referring to. Okay, I appreciate the clarification, and I will withdraw my proposed motion, but I think you get the point about my interest in the sustainability of our airport. So thanks.
Commissioner Burney.
First off, I want to say I absolutely love the Eugene Airport. The service, the accessibility, the ease, and for a number of years, I had to travel out of there for work. I have no idea what the costs of this hearing loop system are, but chalk me up as one that's all for it, as aggressively and pragmatically as makes sense. Whether I was very impressed, by the way, Ms. Stevens, can I call you Catherine?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. I was very impressed with the environmental sustainability update that you forwarded us moments before this meeting. What I wanted to, and I was also impressed with the public input on this airport carbon accreditation. It sounds like you've evaluated that. It sounds like you assessed a path forward. I think the bottom line here, though, consistent with the gentleman that kept talking about if you don't know where you're going, anybody can lead you there, is net zero plus. I would encourage us to look in master planning at how one creates a net zero plus facility. And in the most layman of terms, what your environmental sustainability update incorporated is the first step. It's to decrease as much as possible the use of energy or the use of dirty energy. At a point though, you really don't, my opinion, as someone who retired from a business that, my business, that did about 140 million in solar in about 4 years, you really don't need so many studies, my opinion, to get in the way of moving forward, of assessing structurally what can host solar, in terms of, tagging on to Mr. Zelenka's remarks, in terms of in master planning, where there are areas that again, not necessarily on rooftops, that can host solar. And the only way you get to net zero plus is to generate more energy than you consume. So I liked everything I saw, and I'm looking forward to the next pieces of that. The financing of renewable energy projects does not need to bleed your budget for capital improvements. There are ways to host and have other investors, in fact, finance that, and so encourage us to look into that. And finally, understanding that we have a future. We have a future with or without COVID. It's just looking different. And I'm curious, if I may, the degree to which, if in fact this area, as I think it will, experiences significant growth, especially in the tourist and visitor industry, I'm curious how speedy the airport is able to catch up with growth. I think you stated, I'll stop, the red light's blinking, but I think you stated, Catherine, that it's much better to be in front of it than behind it. And yet I'm sure concurrently, financially, it's much more difficult to be in front of it than behind it. And I'm curious how you might accommodate that if we're fortunate enough to have such growth here. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you so much for your comments. We, in 2019, we're starting to plan, for that 5-year capital improvement program, doing the terminal expansion. And to do that, we would need to have a bond and take on debt. We don't currently have debt. We retired our last debt service in 2008, and we've been very conservative about how we have, done our capital improvements to this point. So we've started, realizing that if we're going to be staying ahead of it, we were going to need to make a large investment, and that would likely take a bond. I'm thankful, actually, not having known what was going to be happening in 2020. I'm glad we didn't go down that road quite yet, but that really, ultimately, that will be what we need to, when we do that terminal expansion, to be able to accommodate growth when we someday return to the same trajectory that we were on before 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. I see Councilor Zelenka with needing another round.
Follow up on one of the questions I asked before is, is our 1% law apply to the airport facilities?
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that, so I will have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the question that Claire asked, on land use goals, the land use goals were written in 1970 and climate change wasn't contemplated then, so there is no climate change goal. And I've often thought that it would be an interesting thing to try to see if we couldn't backdoor our way in or shoehorn our way into climate change into the land use goals, and by talking about it in terms of energy conservation, talking about it in terms of transportation, talking about it in terms of public facilities and resiliency, and also the natural disasters goal 7. And there's ways to get climate change into there. I think it's not explicit because it wasn't ever built in because of the timing, and I doubt we're actually going to reform them to include a climate change goal. I hope we could, but maybe there's a way that the city of Eugene could actually work on a project to see how that could be actually be accomplished. Emily, you got any thoughts on that?
Let me add it. I would agree with you. I think you're exactly right. At this point in time, unfortunately, Goal 13, which is about energy, is not really what we're dealing with. It really is
energy conservation.
It's closer to Goal 7, which is natural disasters, actually, natural hazards and constraints. And that's what we're seeing taxed right now because of climate change.
Yeah, and
that
6 is air quality.
There's very little regulatory implementation of that particular goal.
Well, and 6 is air quality, and Clean Air Act can now regulate climate change pollutants, carbon in particular. So maybe there's another way in.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to have that be part of the work that City of Eugene did moving forward on our land use decisions. No small task, I add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Looks like, Heather, Commissioner, I'm going to turn it over to you again.
Yeah, I see Commissioner Burney's hand up again.
This is just going to be brief. Councilor Zelenka, it's 1.5%, not 1%, of capital improvement projects for municipalities above a certain level. And Catherine, just to let you know, I don't know if you're dealing with that requirement. That's okay. I don't know if you're dealing with
the people who run that actually work for me. I probably should have said that correctly.
Well, in that case, you're not excused. At any rate, Lane County has actually, for large construction projects, looking at that as a floor, not a ceiling. So when I looked at the quote, Catherine, under your email, I decided this is something you're going to grab onto, and I just wanted to clarify Mr. Zelenka's remarks regarding that minimum for municipal projects that I think are over X million dollars. They have to, the 1.5% of the budget has to go to renewable energy.
Yeah, project over 5 million.
Thank you.
But not to burst your bubble, airports are explicitly excluded.
Which doesn't mean that we can't do it. It just means that
it's not a requirement.
Okay, I think, has everyone had an opportunity to ask questions, get the clarification they need? I want to thank you again. Councilor Zelenka, one more comment?
Yeah, one more comment related to our climate action plan. If I got this right, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the airport facility is in our climate action plan and our facilities plan to get to net zero, but the planes aren't. So directly responding to Commissioner Sorensen's question, I think that the facilities are in, the planes aren't, if I got it right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Any final comments, Commissioner Burney?
This is why Councilor Zelenka and I will never be on the same body. Councilor, I wanted to let you know that today Lane County moved forward with its structuring climate action, and our goal is to compete with the City of Eugene and any other entity in our aggressiveness and our net creation of jobs through the plan. And we invite you to compete with us. And hopefully we jointly can support Catherine doing this at the airport. Thank you.
You're on.
Okay, that's exactly the right kind of competition we want. Thank you all very much. And I think I turn it over to Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. So if there aren't any additional comments by commissioners, I am open to approving a motion to approve the second reading and setting the third reading and deliberations for October 20th, 2020 at 1:30.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Bozovich, second by Commissioner Burney. Any discussion? Not hearing any. I will call for a vote on that from commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Mayor.
Hey, thank you. And with that, I will just make clear to everyone that the council's separate deliberations and action will be taken by each jurisdiction independently at future dates. The City of Eugene has tentative deliberations and action scheduled for October 12th. And thank you all very much for your participation, information, and discussion. And with that, council meeting is adjourned.
And Board of County Commissioners meeting is also adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.